You've probably walked past a skyscraper and assumed it was worth a fortune. Glass, steel, 60 stories, Manhattan address. That's money. But there's a 670-foot tower sitting in New York's financial district, less than a mile from Wall Street, that has been completely empty for 7 years. 80 luxury condominiums. Views of the Brooklyn Bridge and New York Harbor. $400 million to build. And nobody lives there. Nobody can. The building tilts 3 inches to the north. Buyers canceled every contract. Lawsuits locked the entire structure in legal concrete. And here's the part that makes it sting. The tilt wasn't caused by an earthquake or a freak engineering failure. It was caused by a single foundation decision that saved $6 million during construction. $6 million in savings created a $400 million disaster that will never be fixed. And the reason why goes deeper than bad engineering. Here's what should have happened. Most skyscrapers in lower Manhattan are anchored using deep pile foundations. Steel or concrete columns driven hundreds of feet straight down into bedrock. Manhattan sits on some of the strongest rock on Earth, schist and gneiss, with bearing capacity exceeding 5,000 pounds per square foot. You drill into that, your building isn't going anywhere. Period. But at the 161 Maiden Lane site, bedrock sits over 155 feet below grade. Driving piles that deep requires specialized equipment, long timelines, and serious engineering budgets. So Fortis Property Group, the developer, made a different call. Instead of going down to the rock, they treated the dirt. The method is called soil improvement. Vibrocompaction, grouting, chemical consolidation, all designed to strengthen the upper soil layers enough to support the building without ever touching bedrock. Think of it like packing sand harder instead of pouring a concrete slab. The savings were $6 to $8 million. That sounds like smart business until you learn what that soil actually is. The 161 Maiden Lane site sits on reclaimed landfill dating back to the 17th century, when lower Manhattan was physically extended into the water using fill and dredging operations. Beneath the surface is a mess. Debris and loose fill material at the top. Marsh sediments and organic material 30 to 50 feet down. Soft clay with poor load capacity below that. Scattered pockets of glacial sand with unpredictable density. And then, 155 feet below all of it, the bedrock they skipped. Soil improvement works when the ground is stable and uniform. This ground was neither. It was centuries of landfill stacked on swamp, stacked on clay, and every layer behaved differently under pressure. But here's the detail that turns a bad decision into a disaster. The soil improvement method was never fully disclosed to Pizzarati, the primary concrete contractor. They started pouring concrete and stacking load onto a foundation they didn't fully understand, built on ground that had no business holding a 60-story tower without bedrock anchoring. And the ground started proving them right almost immediately. By early 2019, Pizzarati's crews noticed something was off. The northern side of the foundation was settling faster than the southern side. Not dramatically, not visibly from the street, but measurably. The entire 670-foot structure was tilting rigidly toward the north. The final number was 3 inches over 670 feet of height. That's a slope of roughly 1 to 2,680. For comparison, the Leaning Tower of Pisa tilts about 13 feet over 180 feet, a slope of 1 to 14. So this isn't Pisa. It's not even close. And that's exactly why most people shrug it off. 3 inches sounds like nothing. But here's what 3 inches actually does to a 60-story building. Facade panels shift out of alignment. When exterior panels don't sit flush, they create stress concentrations at the joints. Those stress points become potential failure zones where pieces can crack or detach entirely. Elevator shafts lose verticality. Elevators require near-perfect vertical alignment to operate. A 3-inch deviation spread across 670 feet makes standard installation almost impossible. The cars can't run true in a crooked shaft. Windows and door frames start to bind. Seals fail. Water finds gaps it was never supposed to find. Structural connections throughout the building take on uneven loading, meaning some joints carry more weight than they were designed for while others carry less. And here's one most people would never think of. The tilt physically pushes the upper floors past the property boundary line. The building encroaches onto neighboring land. That's not just an engineering problem. That's a legal violation baked into the geometry of the structure itself. But all of that is the current damage. The real fear is what comes next. The building is still moving. Without deep piles locked into bedrock, there is no firm stopping point. The chemically treated soil underneath continues to compress under the weight above it. Every month that passes adds incrementally to the settlement. There is no natural floor to hit, no moment where the sinking just stops on its own. The 3 inches that killed this skyscraper might not be the final number. Now here's where the money tells the real story. By September 2018, before anyone even knew about the tilt, Fortis had already burned through a staggering amount of cash. Construction costs alone exceeded $200 million. Design and professional fees ran between $20 and $30 million. Land acquisition added another $40 to $50 million. Financing costs stacked on another $20 to $30 million. Total investment somewhere between $270 and $330 million, all committed before a single resident moved in. The plan was simple and, on paper, extremely profitable. 80 luxury condominiums priced between $4 and $6 million each. Total projected revenue between $320 and $480 million. At the high end, that's a comfortable return. At the low end, it still works. The math made sense right up until April 2019, when the tilt became public. And then the math didn't just stop working. It collapsed completely. Nearly 100% of pre-sold unit contracts were canceled. In New York, buyers have the legal right to walk away from a purchase if there's a material misrepresentation or a structural defect. A building that tilts 3 inches and keeps moving qualifies as both. Every single buyer exercised that right. Revenue went from a projected $320 to $480 million straight down to zero. Not reduced, not discounted. Zero. Fortis was now sitting on a building that cost $330 million to construct and generated absolutely nothing in return. They spent more money than most companies will ever see to build a tower that is now worth less than the land underneath it. And the debt didn't disappear just because the revenue did. Construction loans required the project to maintain value. Once unit sales hit zero, lenders demanded repayment or moved to seize assets. Total debt obligations likely exceed $300 million. Fortis cannot refinance. They cannot sell units. They cannot exit without absorbing catastrophic losses. So the obvious next question is, why not just fix it? Repair the foundation, straighten the building, sell the units, and recover the money. The answer is that fixing it might actually be worse than doing nothing. There are really only 3 ways to deal with a tilting skyscraper, and every single one of them is a trap. Option 1 is the real fix. Drill 400 to 500 foot holes around the building's perimeter down to bedrock. Install steel or reinforced concrete pilings rated for 2,000 to 5,000 tons each. Then underpin the existing shallow foundation by jacking the building and installing transfer beams to shift the load onto the new piles. Cost: $80 to $150 million. Timeline: 3 to 5 years. And the risk is real. The drilling and jacking could worsen the existing settlement or trigger new cracking in a structure that's already compromised. That's not a guaranteed fix. That's a $150 million gamble on a patient that might not survive the surgery. Option 2 is the cosmetic route. Fortis actually suggested this one. Redesign the exterior curtain wall system to visually accommodate the 3-inch tilt. Basically, rebuild the skin of the building to hide the lean. Cost: $30 to $50 million. Timeline: roughly 2 years. But this doesn't touch the root cause. The foundation is still sitting on treated landfill. The building could keep moving. Elevators are still misaligned. Doors still bind. You're putting a fresh coat of paint on a cracked wall and hoping nobody looks too closely. Option 3 is demolition. Tear the entire structure down and rebuild from scratch on proper deep pile foundations. Total cost, $800 million to $1 billion. Practical likelihood of anyone funding that, essentially zero. But here's the part that makes all three options pointless. Even if someone spent $150 million on option 1 and it worked perfectly, the building is permanently toxic. No buyer wants a unit in a tower famous for tilting. Resale values would take a 30 to 50% discount against finished neighbors. Mortgage lenders won't provide financing without a certificate of occupancy. Insurance companies won't cover it. San Francisco's Millennium Tower proved this exact pattern. Similar foundation failure, similar fixed costing over $100 million, and the building still never recovered its value or market credibility. The money never comes back. So if nobody can afford to fix it and nobody can sell it, you'd think someone would at least make a decision. But that's the thing. Nobody can do that either. This building has been locked in litigation for 7 years, and the lawsuits are the reason nothing moves. Pizzarati, the concrete contractor, sued Fortis in March 2019. Their claim is straightforward. Fortis cut corners on the foundation to save $6 to $8 million, never disclosed the soil improvement method to the contractor, and the resulting poor foundation caused differential settlement and the tilt. They want breach of contract damages and a court order forcing Fortis to fix the foundation before any work resumes. Fortis fired back with counterclaims. Their argument is that Pizzarati was hired after the foundation was already complete, and that sloppy concrete pouring practices caused the tilt, not the foundation design. Meanwhile, the New York City Department of Buildings stacked its own violations on top of everything. Non-functional fire suppression system, defective concrete installation, misalignment of structural elements, safety concerns that prevent any occupancy certificate from being issued. And here's where it becomes a perfect loop with no exit. No party will fund an $80 to $150 million remediation without first knowing who's legally responsible. Fortis can't afford to fix the building without winning their case against Pizzarati, and that outcome is far from guaranteed. The courts haven't rendered a final judgment. The case is still grinding through discovery and motion phases. Even if a ruling comes down tomorrow, appeals could stretch the timeline another 5 to 10 years. The building can't be fixed until the lawsuit ends, and the lawsuit can't end because nobody can afford to fix the building. And even if you set the lawsuits aside entirely, the building is still commercially dead. Engineers in the Department of Buildings have stated the structure is not in danger of imminent collapse. The 3-inch tilt doesn't threaten a catastrophic failure, but that changes nothing. No insurance company will cover occupants. No lender will finance purchases. No homeowners association will accept management liability. Structurally safe and completely untouchable at the same time. So what actually happens to a $400 million building that nobody can fix, nobody can sell, and nobody can even agree on who broke it? It sits there. And it will probably keep sitting there for another 10 to 20 years. The most likely outcome is that Fortis eventually files for bankruptcy. The property reverts to lenders who will look at the numbers and do the only thing that makes financial sense: demolish the tower and reclaim the land value, roughly $200 million against over $400 million in total sunk costs. That's a loss you don't recover from. You just absorb it and move on. There's a slim chance a developer swoops in, buys the property for pennies on the dollar, tears everything down, and rebuilds on proper deep pile foundations. But given market saturation in lower Manhattan luxury housing, that scenario is unlikely anytime soon. The third possibility is that New York City eventually seizes the building for unresolved code violations, and it becomes exactly what it already is in practice: a cautionary tale. And here's the part that connects to everyone, not just developers and engineers. If you've ever bought a condo, you trusted that someone anchored the building properly. If you've ever signed a contract on a new construction unit, you assumed the foundation was built to spec. If you've ever looked at a skyline and thought every one of those towers is solid, this is the proof that assumption can cost $400 million. When you cut $6 million from a foundation, you don't save $6 million. You create a problem that outlives every single person who built it. So here's where you land. That skyscraper you'd walk past without a second thought is a 670-foot, 60-story, $400 million monument to a $6 million shortcut. 80 luxury condominiums that no one will ever live in. 3 inches of tilt that no one will ever fix. 7 years of lawsuits that no one will ever win. The engineering solution exists. Deep pilings driven to bedrock would stabilize the building tomorrow, but the economics are permanently broken. No one is going to spend $150 million to save a tower that will never sell a single unit. So it will sit, tilt, and slowly decay in the shadow of Wall Street, while the city grows around it. The most expensive foundation mistake in New York history, and a reminder that the cheapest decision during construction is usually the most expensive one after. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one.